Nestled in the northeastern corners of Africa, Egypt may be one of the most famous civilizations of all time, having captivated the world for millennia. Egypt stands as one of the oldest and most influential civilizations in history, from its vast deserts to the fertile banks of the Nile. Legendary for its monumental structures like the pyramids and its profound advancements in mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, Egypt's story is one of both awe-inspiring triumphs and tragic struggles. And it is a civilization marked by dynasties. For over 3,000 years, the dynasties of Egypt rose and fell, shaping this iconic civilization. Keep watching to learn more about Egypt's dynasties. Early Dynastic Period, circa 3150 to 2686 BCE. Egypt's many dynasties are divided into broader periods. These include the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms, and the Intermediate periods, during which central authority fractured and left Egypt more unstable. Today, we'll explore the dynasties era by era, starting with the early dynastic period. The birth of ancient Egypt began with the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. King Narmer, or Menes, is credited with this monumental achievement, marking the beginning of the early dynastic period and the first dynasty. The title of pharaoh was not used during this period, so the man who unified Upper and Lower Egypt was referred to as a king. Historians disagree on whether the king's name was Narmer or Menes. They also theorize that Menes could have been a successor of Narmer. According to ancient records like Manetho's chronology and the Turin king list, the first king of United Egypt was Menes. However, extensive archaeological evidence suggests that Narmer was likely the historical figure responsible for unifying Upper and Lower Egypt, as depicted on the Narmer palette. Some scholars theorize that Menes might have been a title meaning he who endures, possibly referring to Narmer or another early ruler such as Hor-Ha. Regardless of the exact identity of Egypt's first king, this unification marked the beginning of the first dynasty and the foundation of the Egyptian state. The second dynasty soon followed, and it continued to consolidate power and create the foundations of Egyptian government and culture. However, it was also marked by a lack of, or at least a confusion of, records. None of the rulers of this dynasty have verifiable dates, and none of the names of the kings of the time are corroborated by historical evidence. Despite the confusion and lost records, a king named Hotep Sekemwi is credited with bringing peace to Egypt upon his ascent to the throne. The Old Kingdom, circa 2649 to 2130 BCE. The Old Kingdom, also known as the Age of the Pyramids or Age of the Pyramid Builders, is best remembered for its monumental architecture. Pharaoh Djoser of the Third Dynasty built Egypt's first step pyramid, while Khufu of the Fourth Dynasty constructed the Great Pyramid of Giza, a true marvel of engineering. Some scholars reject Djoser and the Third Dynasty from this era, claiming that the Third Dynasty is more in keeping with the early dynastic period. Still, the Third Dynasty is traditionally part of the Old Kingdom period. It also saw developments in architecture, politics, and religious practices that many historians believe should be included in the Old Kingdom, which is why it is included in this section. Unfortunately, like the previous era, the Old Kingdom left few historical records. Historians regard this era's history as being written in stone because its legacy was so architectural. The best records are found in the monuments and stone inscriptions it left us, most notably the pyramids, the largest and grandest of which were built in the Fourth Dynasty. Although it is widely believed that the pyramids of Giza were built by slave labor, archaeological evidence suggests otherwise. The Egyptian workers would have been highly skilled laborers who were paid for their time. Although enslaved people from Nubia, Libya, and Canaan likely worked in the quarries cutting rock or in the gold mines, it seems they were not entrusted with creating the king's eternal homes, the pyramids. To further weaken the theory that slave labor built the pyramids, no slave quarters have been discovered at Giza, and no Egyptian records relate any events such as that set down in the biblical Book of Exodus, in which the Hebrew people escaped Egyptian slavery. However, workmen's villages, supervisors' quarters, and overseers' homes have all been found. According to historians, they make it clear that the work done at the Giza Plateau in the Old Kingdom was done by Egyptians who were compensated for their skillful work. Between the 5th and 6th dynasties, collapse loomed. After the reign of Pepi II during the 6th dynasty came an end to royal centralized power. While some argue whether the end of the Old Kingdom was a collapse or just a transition to a different kind of government, the end of the Old Kingdom is clear. By the end of the 6th dynasty, centralized power waned and local governors gained political autonomy, leading to the decline of the Old Kingdom. The First Intermediate Period, 2181 to 2055 BCE. The stable eras of Egyptian history, like the Old Kingdom, are referred to in modern times as kingdoms. Meanwhile, eras of political strife or instability are known as intermediate periods. The First Intermediate Period immediately followed the Old Kingdom, and it was a time of fragmented rule and competing dynasties. Traditionally, it is seen as a dark age for Egypt, where the central government built in the early dynastic period collapsed and plunged the country into chaos. Local rulers, or nomarchs, held sway, leading to decentralization. Despite this, the seeds of cultural change were sown. During this era, wealth was spread more evenly throughout the civilization. Without royalty hoarding all the wealth, individual nomes, Egyptian districts, each ruled by a nomarch, became wealthier. Even ordinary people could afford to purchase goods and services that had once only been available to the highest class citizens. While it didn't leave as much of an architectural legacy as the era before them, it was a time of change for the Egyptians. As for how it ended, rival dynasties in Heracleopolis and Thebes vied for control, with Thebes ultimately prevailing under its ruler, Mentuhotep II of the 11th dynasty. This united Egypt once more and ended the First Intermediate Period. The Middle Kingdom, 2055 to 1650 BCE. Also known as the Classical Age, the Middle Kingdom was a period of reunification and cultural flourishing. The 12th dynasty, in particular, established a golden age of stability and prosperity. After Mentuhotep II of the 11th dynasty reunified Egypt, ending the First Intermediate Period, Egypt was once more under centralized control. This renewed a sense of stability in Egyptian culture and created new requirements for the kings. No longer an aloof embodiment of the gods on earth or the sons of gods, as many of the past rulers had been, the kings of the Middle Kingdom were more available to their people. They also established connections with the outside world, like Syria and Nubia. This period also maintained one of the changes from the First Intermediate Period. More Egyptians could afford to equip themselves for the afterlife. If they existed today, these people would be recognized as part of the middle class. Literature, architecture, and art flourished during this period, with works like the Tale of Sinuhe becoming cultural cornerstones. According to many estimations of the Middle Kingdom, Egypt reached its highest point of culture during the 12th dynasty, and the innovations that occurred during this time influenced the rest of Egypt's history. The Second Intermediate Period, 1650 to 1550 BCE. After the Middle Kingdom's period of stability and centralization, Egypt was plunged into another period traditionally viewed as chaotic and dark. However, many modern historians believe that even though this time of disunity lacks historical records, it may not have been the dark period that some Egyptian writers have claimed it to be. It began when the Egyptian rulers of the 13th dynasty moved the capital from south of Memphis in a city named Itzjawi back to Thebes, which had been the capital in the late 11th dynasty. This loosened their control over the north, which opened the area for the rise of a new political influence, the Hyksos. The Egyptians knew them by the name Hekakesut, or rulers of foreign lands, but the Greeks called them Hyksos, the name we now know them by. Egyptian writers depict the Hyksos as brutal conquerors who ruined Egypt, ransacking its temples and oppressing its people. However, archaeological evidence from the time tells a different story. It seems they lived in tolerance, if not peace, with the Theban kings until Thebes declared war on them over a perceived insult. Native Egyptian rulers in Thebes eventually expelled the Hyksos, starting with Kamose of the 17th dynasty, who began campaigns to expel them. Ahmose I of the 18th dynasty completed the task, ending the Second Intermediate Period, founding the new kingdom, and ending what may once have been a peaceful relationship with the Hyksos. The New Kingdom, 1550 to 1070 BCE. The New Kingdom marked Egypt's height of power and wealth, and many view it as the most popular era in Egyptian history. This era saw the establishment of an empire stretching from Nubia to the Near East. In this era, the word pharaoh came to describe Egyptian rulers. It is also the most thoroughly documented period in Egyptian history. Literacy expanded so much throughout the Middle Kingdom and the Second Intermediate Period that by the time of the New Kingdom, many Egyptians were writing and sending letters and drafting contracts, treaties, and bills of sale. The 18th dynasty included some of Egypt's most famous rulers, such as Hatshepsut, who expanded trade, Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti, and Tutankhamun, whose tomb still dazzles us today. In the 19th dynasty, Ramses the Great secured Egypt's legacy through military campaigns and monumental projects. The New Kingdom's temples, tombs, and statues remain some of the most iconic symbols of ancient Egypt. The late period in the Ptolemaic dynasty, 664 to 30 BCE. After another period of political fragmentation in the Third Intermediate Period, the late period saw a resurgence of Egyptian culture under native rulers. Unlike the other periods that had followed an unstable intermediate period, the late period was not a seemingly blissful time of recovery for Egypt. It saw continued political weakness, and apart from a short interval of Egyptian pharaohs during the 26th, 28th, and 29th dynasties, the country was under foreign rule from powers like the Nubians, the Assyrians, the Persians, and finally, Alexander the Great. The Ptolemaic dynasty, followed by Ptolemy I, a general and successor of Alexander the Great, blended Greek and Egyptian traditions. Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, became a center of culture and learning under Ptolemaic rule. The dynasty contributed to the construction of landmarks like the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Great Library of Alexandria, both of which became symbols of the city's prominence in the ancient world. Another well-known figure of this era was Cleopatra VII, who became ancient Egypt's most famous and final ruler. Despite her efforts to preserve her empire and strengthen connections to the Roman Empire, Cleopatra's alliances with Rome ultimately failed. Although some speculate that her Roman political rival Octavian forced her to kill herself, it is commonly accepted that Cleopatra died by suicide. After her death, Egypt was annexed and became a Roman province in 30 BCE. It would be integrated into the Roman economy and governance. From the unification under Narmer to Cleopatra's final stand, Egypt's dynasties were the lifeblood of its civilization. Each dynasty contributed to the culture, architecture, and legacy of one of history's most enduring empires. Egypt's history is complex and includes so much more captivating history than can be summarized in one video. The dynasties were only one part of this incredible empire. Egypt has earned its place as one of the world's most well-known civilizations, from its government to its technological advances to the many outstanding figures that lived in this civilization. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Egypt and its dynasties, check out the book History of Egypt, an enthralling overview of Egyptian history. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.